Dubai is home to some of the most ambitious real estate projects ever built. Record-breaking towers, artificial islands, luxury developments visible from space. To most investors, the story seems simple. Money, growth, opportunity. But one question rarely gets asked: how do some of the world's most expensive buildings exist in one of the most demanding construction environments on Earth? Because beneath the luxury, the environment never disappeared. Heat, salt, sand, and increasingly extreme weather events. So what are serious buyers seeing that most buyers never see? That's the investigation. Because the real question is not how impressive these buildings are, it's what they quietly cost to keep performing over time. And that has very little to do with luxury. It has everything to do with due diligence. Let's do a simple test. Imagine you are buying an investment property in Dubai. Two new buildings, both luxury, both attractive, both built by reputable developers. Which one would you choose? Most investors compare the view, the location, the expected return, the brochure. Honestly, I probably would too. But here is the problem. No one of that tells you how the building will perform 20 years from now, and none of it tells you what ownership may quietly cost over time. Because investors often buy the asset they can see. Experienced professionals evaluate the forces they cannot: heat, salt, humidity, wind-blown sound, environmental exposure. The environment doesn't care how expensive the apartment is. It applies the same pressure to every building. This is what experienced investors ask a different question. Not only how much can I earn, but what will it cost to keep this asset performing? Because luxury creates value, but ownership cost decides how much of the value remains. Let's start with something everyone can see: the heat. Most people experience Dubai's climate as a comfort issue. Air conditioning, electricity bills, walking outside in summer. But engineers see something different. They see stress. Every material expands when it gets hot and contracts when it cools. Day after day, year after year. Invisible but constant. Glass, steel, concrete, aluminum. Every part of the building responds to the environment, and over time, stress becomes maintenance. Maintenance becomes cost, and cost becomes part of the investment. The challenge is not the heat itself. Engineers know how to build for heat. The challenge is what that heat can demand from the asset over decades. Most investors ask, how much rental income can it generate? Experienced professionals ask, what will this asset cost to keep performing? That's where due diligence begins, not with today's appearance, but with tomorrow's maintenance burden. Now let's look at something most investors never think about: salt. Not inside the building, in the environment around it, because Dubai is not only a desert city, it's also a coastal city. Every day, tiny salt particles travel through the air. Most people never notice them. Engineers do. Over time, salt exposure can accelerate corrosion, material degradation, maintenance requirement, repair cycles. The process is slow, almost invisible, And that's exactly what it makes dangerous. Because investors often evaluate property as it looks today. Experienced professionals evaluate what it may cost to keep it performing tomorrow. Two buildings can look identical, but over time, one may manage environmental exposure better than the other. That difference can become visible in maintenance cost, resident satisfaction, asset competitiveness, resale confidence. These challenges are well understood. Modern engineering can manage them. Modern maintenance strategies can manage them, but only if they are anticipated. That's why experienced investors don't simply ask, is this building luxurious? They ask, how is this building protected? And just as importantly, what will that protection cost over time? Because the environment is a part of the asset. In April 2024, something unusual happened. Dubai experienced one of the most significant rainfall events in its modern history. Images traveled around the world. Flooded roads, traffic disruption, water where most people never expect to see. For many observers, the conclusion seemed obvious. Dubai wasn't prepared, but experienced professionals asked a different question. Prepare for what? Every city designs around the condition it expects most often, not the conditions that occur once in a generation. A city in Northern Europe prepares for snow. Florida prepares for hurricanes. Japan prepares for earthquakes. Every environment has priorities. Historically, Dubai's challenge was never excessive rainfall. Its challenge was heat, salt, sand, environmental exposure. The 2024 event reminds investors of something important. Rare doesn't mean impossible. And when a rare event happens, the question is not only whether the asset survives. The question is what the event reveals about ownership, downtime, repairs, access, insurance assumptions, building management response. These are not abstract risks. They become part of the ownership experience. This is where due diligence matters, not because investors should fear rare events, because they should understand them. The question is never could something happen? The question is what happens if it does? That's the difference between speculation and preparation. Let's imagine two buildings. Both look identical. Both are luxury developments. Both attract international buyers. Both command prices. Which one would you buy? Most investors don't have enough information to answer that question, because the most important differences are often invisible. The elevators, the cooling systems, the facade strategy, the waterproofing, the inspection program, the long-term maintenance budget. They are not the things developers put on billboards, but they often determine how a building performs over time. Experienced investors don't only ask, how impressive is this building? They ask, how will this building be maintained? Because every building ages. The only question is how well that aging process is managed over 10 or 20 years. Maintenance quality affects operating costs, resident satisfaction, asset competitiveness, resale confidence, and eventually owner optionality. The brochure helps sell the asset, maintenance protects the asset, and eventually the market notices the differences. At first, it looks like maintenance, later it becomes cost. then competitiveness, then liquidity. And that is where the ownership trap begins. At this point, you might be wondering, how do experienced investors deal with all of this? The answer is not prediction, it's preparation. Nobody can predict every future event. Not investors, not engineers, not developers, but professionals can reduce uncertainty. That's why experienced buyers rarely rely on marketing alone. They review sold studies, structural reports, maintenance plans, warranty documents, inspection records, building management information. Not because paperwork is exciting, because these documents often reveal what ownership may actually demand. Amateur investors ask, how much could I make? Experienced investors ask, what assumptions am I making? That single question changes everything. Due diligence doesn't eliminate uncertainty. It helps you understand it. It tells you what you are accepting before the asset starts demanding it from you. The goal isn't to find a perfect asset. The goal is to avoid hidden costs that only appears after ownership's beginning. Because in real estate, surprises are expensive. So, what do experienced investors evaluate that most buyers never see? Not only luxury, not only architecture, not only rental yield. They evaluate what ownership may demand from the asset over time. Heat, salt, humidity, maintenance, environmental exposure, time, because every property exists inside a larger system, and every system eventually leaves its mark. That's the hidden cost most buyers underestimate. It appears slowly in maintenance, in operation costs, in competitiveness, in result confidence, in liquidity, and sometimes in the owner's ability to exit. The question is never only, is the property impressive? The question is, what will this property demand from me over time? Because luxury creates attention, but due diligence protects capital. The most successful investors don't buy certainty. They reduce uncertainty, and that starts by asking better questions, because luxury does not replace due diligence, and the most valuable property is often the one where ownership risks are best understood. That's the difference between buying real estate and understanding it.